show today. Big show. It usually takes about 15-20 seconds before this pops, before we actually go live on Facebook. Let me get it all tuned up here. Thanks for your patience. Again, there's a little lag, so I always let it roll for 20-30 seconds before we get going. Make sure we're actually live. Big show today, as usual, getting links from the indomitablericefarmer.blogspot.com. Looking at the economic implications of this whole situation, the lockdowns. We're seeing a big protest movement in response. It's coming to Wyoming. We're going to cover that today. Global March for Freedom Saturday, May 2nd on the schedule. A little far out for my taste, but you get the idea. More protests, looking at statistics that are more reliable, less reliable. Seeing how the statistics out of China even weren't reliable. They've been changed. Some fear porn, some economic news. Looking at the surveillance state being built up with COVID, and then some memes that I found very interesting, and more fear porn. I'll slide that one. Let's see, I'm going to slide that one over here for the show today. And then we're going to look at a great article by Caitlin Johnstone. We are ruled by wizards. You could be a wizard yourself. What's up, fam? It's me, your boy Max Mogren, reporting live for you from beautiful Alpine, Wyoming. This is Wake Up Wyoming. It's a beautiful sunny Saturday here in glorious Alpine, Wyoming. Blue skies, birds singing. Man, I would have loved to go out and get some breakfast at the local Yankee Doodle Cafe today, but it's closed like so many other restaurants. Still in the midst of this unprecedented lockdown, the early stages of the greatest depression in recent human history, as far as I'm concerned, is inbound, unless a grassroots movement can get us back on the right track. This global techno-fascist lockdown seems to be the straw that broke the system's back, and only a global grassroots resistance movement can get us back on track. That's my opinion. If you look down at the bottom there, I got a lot of reasons to support my opinion. Again, it's my opinion. It's not the opinion of everybody here at Wake Up News, but my opinion as to why these lockdowns need to end. Let's get into it. You know, my first reason there, number one, is poverty. Okay, poverty is more deadly than the coronavirus. So far globally, even the most doomy statistics we can come up with are telling us there's 2,274,000 confirmed cases of COVID. At the same time, we're being warned by folks like Oxfam that 500 million people could be pushed into poverty by the coronavirus. Of course, poverty very deadly. So even the most fear-porny statistics you can come up with at the Johns Hopkins Event 201 Associated Global Coronavirus Real-Time, not very reputable, however, doom map. 2,275,000 confirmed cases. And due to that, the whole world's locked down, and perhaps 500 million people. 500 million more people could be pushed into poverty by this situation. So let's get into it. Again, links from ricefarmer.blogspot.com. Check him out. We got an audience. Let's get into it. UN warns the economic downturn could kill hundreds of thousands of children in 2020. Okay. The most reputable info I can find says that 22,000 children die every day due to poverty. 22,000 per day. Think about that. And more children are going to die due to this absurd state of techno-fascist, globalist, medical martial law lockdown, which has been implemented all over the planet, coming from Reuters at the UN. Again, take it all with a grain of salt. The UN, not an exceptionally reliable organization. You know, we got to take everything with a grain of salt these days. But here's what they have to say. Hundreds of thousands of children could die this year due to the global economic downturn sparked by the coronavirus pandemic, and tens of millions more could fall into extreme poverty as a result of the crisis, the United Nations warned on Thursday. Okay, they're saying tens of millions. Oxfam is saying 500 million. The World Body also said in a risk report that nearly 369 million children across 143 countries who normally rely on school meals for a reliable source of daily nutrition have now been forced to look elsewhere. Compared with adults, children infected with the coronavirus are less likely to have symptoms and more likely to have a mild illness, U.S. and Chinese studies have found. But the UN report warned that economic hardship experienced by families as a result of the global economic downturn, which is a direct result of these absurd lockdowns, could result in a hundreds of thousands of additional. Wow, they got a typo in there. Typo on Reuters, caught it. You guys need to hire me as an editor. Could result in hundreds of thousands of additional child deaths in 2020. Reversing the last 2 to 3 years of progress in reducing infant mortality. It stands to reason. The United Nations said an estimated 42 to 66 million children could fall into extreme poverty as a result of the coronavirus crisis this year, adding to the estimated 386 million children already in extreme poverty. Another factor, of course, 188 countries have imposed countrywide school closures, affecting more than 1.5 billion children, right? Children are the future. And, maybe it's a good thing that public schools are closed down because in a lot of countries, they're just indoctrination camps. But this whole situation, we're painting the situation where we're literally, what's the old Parliament Funkadelic lyric, America, it's an old album, America eats its young, right? Well, globally, we're eating the young. By protecting the old, the elderly, the infirm, people who spent their whole lives not taking very good care of themselves and leaving themselves more susceptible to the coronavirus, which doesn't kill children, but children are going to suffer. Children are going to suffer. How many children? Tens, if not hundreds of millions. 1.5 billion children out of school. Virus can push 500 million people into poverty, said the BBC on April 9th. Oxfam report between 400 and 600 million people being pushed into poverty. To put that into perspective, again, the most doom porny statistic from Johns Hopkins, the Event 201 Associated institution that worked with Billy Gates and the World Economic Forum to plan out this situation we find ourselves in now. 2.2 million confirmed cases, the vast majority not deadly. Okay. This is an old one from The Guardian. Coronavirus threatens to turn aid crises into humanitarian catastrophes. Restrictions on movement prevent food and medicine from reaching people in adversity, experts warn. No doubt about that. I found this meme. I thought it was interesting. You can see the Venn diagram. People taking COVID-19 seriously. Initially I took it seriously, but then I did a little more research, a little more homework, and realized that a new strain of coronavirus, this one doesn't seem to be much more deadly than the regular flu or similar diseases. People worried about expansion of authoritarian government policies, people very concerned about impending economic devastation. Yeah, that's where I would put myself. I'm concerned about the authoritarian push, right? The totalitarian tiptoe encircling the globe and the simultaneous orchestrated economic collapse. Okay, both of these factors, like, yes, people are dying from the coronavirus. Yes, it's a serious disease, but it's not any more deadly than a lot of other diseases. And there are a lot of diseases like heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's that kill way more people every year. We've covered this in the past on the show. People are getting fed up, right? I'm pretty fed up with the whole thing. And here in Wyoming on Monday in Cheyenne, but we might as well have some protests locally as well. It's time to reopen Wyoming. We want to work. The rally for the choice to work, noon this Monday, April 20th, 2020. In Cheyenne at the Capitol. Okay, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Forecast is looking to be nice, mostly sunny. Get out there. Residents are organizing a rally for the choice to work at high noon on Monday, April 20th, 2020. This rally to employ our constitutionally protected right to peaceably assemble will take place at the steps of our state's capital in Cheyenne. This rally is for individuals who believe that the current orders from our governor are not only unconstitutional, but they are harmful to our state and to our nation. The Wuhan virus situation will not be remedied by an either-or solution. We can keep both our jobs and our health. The facts are on the side of common sense with targeted quarantine of high-risk categories of individuals. If you are high risk, please stay home and we will represent you while we rally for the choice to work. Let's encourage our governor to fully open Wyoming's economy. Share this with your friends who cherish their God-given, constitutionally protected rights to free speech, peaceable assembly, and the right to work. They even go into the Wyoming State Constitution Declaration of Rights. Again, it's a peaceful protest to make our opinions known. So check that one out. The Rally for the Choice to Work, April 20th, high noon in Cheyenne. Another march, the Global March for Freedom, scheduled for Saturday, May 2nd from 2 to 5 p.m. Where? Every city hall, public park, and downtown in every country. Organize family and friends and just show up. Film and march your streets. Get out and show them we will not live in fear. Upload your stories because there are more of us than them. Remember, friends, if you surrender your freedoms, you may not get them back. Other protests going on. Amazon employees are planning an online walkout to protest firings and treatment of warehouse workers. Of course, Amazon.com is booming in the midst of this situation. So many markets, small local stores shut down, non-essential services shut down, but apparently Amazon is allowed to sell and ship things all over the planet with impunity in the midst of this. A group of Amazon employees are now calling for workers to walk out on April 24th in protest of the company's labor practices. Oh, they're the climate justice folks, though. So we'll see what happens there. Interestingly, it's important to note, the protests work both ways. As an example, in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, just south of the border, workers are protesting because some of them want these factories to shut down. So it works both ways. A spate of suspected coronavirus deaths among workers for U.S. companies operating along the border in Mexico has triggered multiple protests in recent days, highlighting friction over which factories should remain open in the pandemic. At least 4 workers at American companies' factories in Mexican border towns died this week, companies and workers said on Thursday, adding to several factory worker fatalities apparently linked to cases of the new coronavirus since the start of April. Okay, again, apparently linked. We've shown on the show here that a lot of these deaths, folks are not getting tested, and the new guidelines put in place by folks like the World Health Organization, the CDC, are drastically inflating the number of coronavirus deaths. So we don't know how these people in Mexico died, but if they were in the United States, odds are they would have been labeled as coronavirus deaths and added to the doom map. Protests calling for safe conditions of shutdowns with full pay outside factories have taken place in border towns Mexicali, Matamoros, Reynosa, and Tijuana after the Mexican government on March 30th ordered non-essential industries to suspend operations. So it works both ways. Some people want to go back to work. Some people want safer working conditions. I think we can all agree that going back to work and safer working conditions are a win. Okay, published 2 days ago by Reuters. Scattered protests push back on U.S. coronavirus stay-at-home orders. Detroit. A sweeping stay-at-home order in 42 U.S. states to combat the new coronavirus have shuttered businesses, disrupted lives, and decimated the economy. Some protesters have begun taking to the streets to urge governors to rethink the restrictions. A few dozen protesters, many with young children, gathered in Virginia's state capital of Richmond on Thursday in defiance of Democratic Governor Ralph Northam's mandate, the latest in a series of demonstrations this week around the country. The protests have taken on a partisan tone, often featuring supporters of President Trump and critiquing governors whose shelter-at-home directives are intended to slow the spread of pandemic that has killed more than 31,000 across the United States. Okay. They say that so matter-of-factly. They say it's killed more than 31,000 across the United States. Again, we can't trust these death counts. We can't trust the mainstream media. We can't trust the World Health Organizations. Frankly, we can't trust our own government. Anybody that doesn't believe me on that one, well, let's take it back to 9/11. Just remember, no plane ever hit World Trade Center 7. Yet it fell into its own footprint at free fall speed that afternoon, the same afternoon that 3,000 Americans were murdered by shadowy factions of our own government in the greatest false flag attack perpetuated against the American people. But it's hard to trust anything. They're saying 30,000, 31,000 deaths across the United States. That parallels closely the Johns Hopkins doom map. Now it's up to 37,087. But if we go over to the CDC and look at their provisional health, National Vital Statistics System, provisional death counts for coronavirus, which includes presumed cases, they're telling us that there have been 13,130. Again, these statistics are not complete, but these are the most reliable statistics. This map, which is so heavily cited, has been proven to be littered with misinformation estimates. And again, this confirmed cases include presumed positive cases. It says right there. So no tests needed. We don't really know how many people have the coronavirus. We don't really know how many people have died from the coronavirus. But we do know that the rate, the number of people who have confirmed cases is underestimated, and the number of deaths has been overinflated. Okay. Provisional death counts saying 13,000. Again, this is incomplete data, but it's a far cry from 37,000. We can see here an example of how unreliable all these preliminary figures that are getting thrown around so matter-of-factly by the mainstream media is. If we look at this website, sixthtone.com, fresh voices from today's China, Wuhan's revised Corona-19 data shows a 50% increase in deaths. Okay, so they just jacked up the number of deaths attributed to coronavirus in Wuhan by 50%. What's up with that? Authorities in the central Chinese city of Wuhan have issued new coronavirus data indicating more confirmed cases and deaths than had been previously reported. In a statement Friday, the Municipal Outbreak Control and Prevention Command Center said that as of the previous day, the cumulative number of confirmed cases in the city had been revised to 50,333, up from 50,008. So not much. But the death count, the total number of confirmed, in quotes, confirmed deaths, meanwhile, was raised by 1,290 from 2,579 to 3,869. An increase of exactly 50%. In the revised figures, 217 duplicate reports were subtracted from Wuhan's total number of confirmed cases, while 542 missed reports were added, according to the official. As for the revised death toll, 164 duplicate or non-coronavirus related deaths were deducted from the previous figure. Okay, so these were deaths that were either double reported or not coronavirus related, but they were initially called coronavirus deaths. And meanwhile, 1,454 missed reports, those who died without being admitted to hospitals, or late or missed reports from some medical institutions, were added. Okay, so sounds like the statistics aren't that reliable, right? China, they're saying they were off by 50%. They said they underestimated the number of deaths, but we don't really know. Nobody really knows. Got to put my blast shields down. We got some doom porn, right? The mainstream media is doing everything it can to try to terrorize us into submission as these scattered protests push back on coronavirus stay-at-home orders. Just some examples of the doom porn coming out of the mainstream media. Coronavirus has reached from beyond the grave. Deceased body transmits COVID-19. It's technically possible to catch COVID-19 from the dead. Okay. Classic fear porn from the mainstream media. Another example of fear porn, the World Health Organization. Bill Gates, of course, is the #1 private funder of the World Health Organization, the same Bill Gates that invests heavily in vaccines, wants to push for mandatory coronavirus vaccines all over the planet, affecting everybody, tracking everybody to make sure that we can be as safe as possible. We need to be tracked, apparently, according to Billy Gates. And more fear porn coming from Reuters, published yesterday. The World Health Organization unsure antibodies protect against COVID. There's little sign of herd immunity. Okay. More fear porn. They're letting us know that our immune systems can't take it on alone. We're going to need a vaccine, so they say. It's important to note, again, let's see through the fear porn. Most people, the vast majority of people, perhaps 99.9% of people who catch the coronavirus do not die from the coronavirus. Okay. At least 99%, perhaps 99.9%. And the notion that, they talk about herd immunity here and say, it's not going to work. Your antibodies aren't going to protect you forever. That's the way it works with a lot of diseases, right? You catch a cold, which is another coronavirus, and you get over it. You're healthy for a while. A few months later, maybe you don't take good care of yourself. You get dehydrated. You don't get enough sleep. You eat a bunch of junk food. You go out and get drunk, smoke too many cigarettes, whatever. What happens? Your body becomes susceptible to disease. You get another cold. That's the way it works. COVID is a coronavirus, pretty similar to the common cold. Pretty similar to the flu, which isn't a coronavirus, but a similar type of virus. The point is, your immune system doesn't ramp up and stay ramped up forever after you successfully fight off a disease that doesn't kill 99.9% of the people that catch it. That's the way it works. That's the way the immune system works. That's the way disease works. And but the way they're putting it out there, it's fear porn. Good news here. Aircraft carrier taken out of service by COVID-19. France's only aircraft carrier, right? Isn't it absurd at the same time that we're being told we need to trust these governments. We need to let them lock us down in order to keep us safe. But at the same time, Uncle Sam's still out there terrorizing the world. Uncle Sam's still dropping bombs, computer-guided bombs from drones all over the world, still spying on the whole world, and still staging war games. U.S. destroyers join NATO exercise in the Baltic and Black Seas. Okay, these same governments that are so concerned about the health and well-being of the elderly and infirm that they just had to lock down the entire planet, eliminate basic essential freedoms, and shatter the world economy, thrusting hundreds of millions of people into completely avoidable poverty. They're still out there running around playing G.I. Joe all over the planet. Just thought this was interesting. Economic news published yesterday at Reuters. U.S. airlines sitting on $10 billion owed to consumers for canceled flights. Wow. CNBC letting us know, again, one of my biggest reasons, if we look at my reasons, my opinion about why these lockdowns need to end. Reason number one, poverty is definitely more deadly than COVID. And according to CNBC and the IMF, which neither one is a reputable organization, but we take what we can get, the global economy may not fully recover from the coronavirus crisis by 2021. IMF chief economist says, no doubt. Coming from Zero Hedge, published yesterday, the U.S. leading economic indicators crash by the most in over 60 years. The U.S. Conference Board's leading economic index crashed 6.7% in March, the biggest monthly drop since the series began in 1959. Again, in the midst of all this, we're being told that we need, we just have to tighten our belts when the global economy shits the bed by design. And in the midst of this, they're pushing for these, mandatory global vaccines, which is pretty fucked up if you want my honest opinion about it. And the surveillance state is creeping on up. For example, Australians are being urged to adopt phone tracking app in coronavirus fight. Same thing here in the US. And places like Baltimore, we saw this in China, right? We saw the drones flying around China, talking to people, telling them to go home, apparently dropping masks to people that didn't have masks. And now Baltimore, Maryland, for example, wants 24-hour high-definition surveillance drones to enforce social distancing. Again, one of my reasons why I think these lockdowns should end is that social isolation is more deadly than the COVID as well. In the midst of all this, we're being told we need to shut our lives down. We need to tighten our belts. We need to just give up all our freedoms. And what's the official government response? Well, out there in Las Vegas, they're painting little social isolation squares on the ground for homeless people to sleep in while empty hotels loom in the background, right? If this was really all about public health, we could probably take a little bit better care of the people who are most vulnerable. Looking at the overall situation, talking about how a global grassroots movement is the only thing that could possibly get us back on the right track. I think we got to reach out to the burners right now, the Bernie Sanders supporters, because they just got screwed by the system. Just like Ron Paul supporters got screwed in 2012, just like Bernie Sanders supporters got screwed in 2016. Now, yet again, the candidate the people really wanted for the Democratic nominee for the presidency of the United States of America got screwed by his own party. It's a tale as old as time. It happens all the time. And this, I thought, was a good point. Bernie Sanders created a movement that brought together millions of activists, organizers, political junkies, speakers, artists, workers, students, and the most brilliant minds in the world. And they are all discovering that electoralism is a fraud. The ruling class should be worried. Okay, that's over a month old. I think more and more people are waking up to that. A lot of y'all can probably relate to this. Oh, birds hitting the window. A lot of people can probably relate to this and their path to enlightenment, their path to awakening to how the system is rigged, how presidents are not elected, but rather selected. Here's a fine example of a young liberal lady who back in 2008 was all hopeful with the Obama election. Then in 2012, you can see she was saddled with student debt, a little older, a little wiser. You see she's got her End the Wars sweater on there, reading The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. A great read. I would recommend that book to everybody. She's saying incremental change is better than nothing, right? 2016, you can see she was a Bernie supporter, and then Bernie sold out. Bernie got screwed. And she's saying, her sign says Clinton, I guess. She's got vote blue no matter who slapped up over the Bernie poster. And now in 2020, she's got the anarchy symbol painted on her wall. She's voting for Vermin Supreme. Vermin, I actually met Vermin out at Standing Rock. He's a nice guy. I like that guy, Vermin Supreme. Probably not going to vote for him. Probably not voting for anybody. But you can see right there, she's saying, fuck it, right? Putting our faith in leaders has not gotten us very far. Case in point, let's not just pick on the Democrats. Let's look at the Republicans too. Little Chris Farley, throwing it back for you. Remember when you said you were going to lock up Hillary, but then you locked all of us up instead? That was awesome, right? It's important to note, some people put a lot of their faith in Donald Trump. They get a little cute-hearted from time to time. It's tempting. It's easy to fall into that. Trump has very effectively painted himself. He's very effectively portrayed himself as a champion of the people fighting against limitless corruption in D.C., right? But is he really doing that? Really? Really? I don't know. I don't think so. Another meme I found interesting I want to share with y'all. The conspiracy theorists, a group I would proudly lump myself in, even though this term conspiracy theorist was made up by the CIA long ago to silence and marginalize dissent. But folks like me, the conspiracy theorists, warned people for years that economic collapse, mandatory vaccinations, digital currency, and microchips were on their way. And everybody laughed. Everybody laughed at us. They did. Not everybody, but people think you're crazy if you step outside the box, you do a little critical thinking. And then March happened. And we saw all those things being foisted upon us, right? Economic collapse by design, mandatory vaccinations being pushed through. We're being told that, currency, the dollar bills, paper currency is transmitting the virus. So no cash. And they're talking about tracking everybody, whether with your cell phone or with like a nanotech marker linked to your COVID-19 vaccination. So all those things are kind of, they're being pushed for. And a lot of people woke up to that in March. Then they tried to tell you that the government, then we conspiracy theorists try to tell you that the government was manipulating the data and the panic was irrational, and everybody laughed. Then this week happened, right? We're confirmed. Our statements have been confirmed. If you do even the tiniest little bit of research, you can see that this COVID-19 pandemic fiasco has been blown way out of proportion. The books are cooked. The numbers are fudged. Yes, people are dying, but now they're saying it in the U.S. They're estimating 60,000 COVID deaths by August. That is similar to annual flu deaths in the U.S. It's almost as if people who research things with a computer know more about these subjects than people who believe everything they see on TV. Speaking of the vaccine push, the technocratic, globalist, oligarch elites, Billy Gates, fine example of that. If you know the history of Microsoft, you know that Bill Gates is not really a computer genius. He's a shyster. He's a shyster. And Billy's got connections to the Rockefellers. He's got family members that are deeply associated in the Federal Reserve banking system, which is a private, profit-driven banking cartel. And his dad was one of the founders and leaders of Planned Parenthood, which is arguably the most mainstream eugenics organization on the planet, right? Making it so easy for the poor to depopulate themselves. Back in the 80s, Bill's big, brilliant business idea, let's infect computers with viruses and then sell antivirus software. And in 2019, Bill put together Event 201. He's been pushing for vaccinations for over a decade here. Let's infect people with a virus and then sell vaccines. Okay, again, I'm not saying this meme is implying that this virus is man-made. I don't know enough about it to make that implication myself, but I thought it was a funny meme, and it reflects the character of Billy Gates. This one I like too. We got our boomer doofus here on the computer sipping his coffee. I got my coffee too. The coronavirus vaccine is going to eliminate the coronavirus, just like the flu vaccine eliminated the flu, right? Think about it. Critical analysis. Again, who's pushing for these sorts of things? The World Health Organization. Who is the biggest funder of the World Health Organization? Well, that would be Bill Gates. Of course, World Health Organization sounds really reputable. Sounds like they really care about your health, right? Sounds like these non-governmental organizations, like the World Health Organization, we can trust them. Yeah, maybe not. And if you want an example of why these big billionaire-backed organizations like the World Health Organization can't be trusted and how their names can be misleading, all we have to do is look at this excellent article over there at Consortium News, independent investigative journalism and political review since 1995, published today. This is hot off the press, my friends. Hot off the press. Just like the World Health Organization, Human Rights Watch is a big billionaire-backed Non-governmental organization lobbying for lethal U.S. sanctions on leftist governments as COVID rages. Written by Ben Norton of the Gray Zone. Brilliant guy. This guy's actually on the ground in Afghanistan, or not Afghanistan, on the ground in Nicaragua right now, excuse me. Human Rights Watch, the leading so-called rights organization in the United States, has actively lobbied for Washington to impose suffocating sanctions on leftist governments in Latin America. The group has even praised the Donald Trump administration for ramping up its aggressively destabilizing regime change measures. NGOs like Human Rights Watch depict targeted sanctions as a more palatable alternative to military action, although these measures are widely recognized by international legal experts to be a form of economic warfare that have led to the deaths of many thousands of civilians, destroyed the livelihoods of countless people, and devastated entire nations' economies. As the coronavirus pandemic spread across the globe, Human Rights Watch operatives took credit for the new sanctions the Trump administration had imposed on Nicaragua's democratically elected leftist Sandinista government. Among those cheering on the escalation of economic warfare was Human Rights Watch Australia Development and Outreach Manager Stephanie McLennan, who chirped that the fresh round of sanctions against Nicaragua were great news. Unilateral sanctions are designed to cripple the economies of countries whose governments are being targeted for regime change, locking them out of the U.S.-dominated financial system and collectively punishing the entire civilian population, depriving them of basic human rights so that Washington can install a more friendly regime. The U.S. government routinely implements these coercive measures without the backing of the United Nations or other international bodies. Rather than challenge the unilateral economic war waged across the globe by the U.S., Human Rights Watch is taking credit for the escalation of Washington's assault on Nicaragua. And at the very moment when the small country of just 6 million people grapples with the deadly COVID-19 outbreak and an arduous peace and reconciliation project. Okay, what are they reconciling from? Well, if you didn't know, in 2018, the Trump administration backed a bloody coup attempt in Nicaragua in which right-wing extremists shot, tortured, and killed state security forces and leftist Sandinista activists, burning down buildings and setting people on fire in hopes of destabilizing the government. When the putsch fizzled out, opposition groups funded by the U.S. government turned to economic warfare and sanctions for the next weapon in the regime change arsenal. Purported human rights organizations in Nicaragua that work closely with the right-wing opposition played a major role in this coup attempt, selling outlandish fabricated statistics that were eagerly regurgitated by the corporate media and international NGOs like Human Rights Watch. Outlandish fabricated statistics. Where else are we seeing outlandish fabricated statistics these days? Human Rights Watch's staunch support for U.S. sanctions clearly demonstrates how the group has been instrumentalized as an arm of U.S. pressure against independent states like the Global South, especially socialist states. NGOs like Human Rights Watch provide cover for economic warfare, preventing nations like Nicaragua from rebuilding and healing the social divisions that have been exacerbated through successive U.S.-backed destabilization campaigns. The same strategy is apparent in Venezuela, another leftist country in Latin America targeted by an ongoing U.S. coup attempt. Having spent over a decade demonizing the socialist government of Caracas, Human Rights Watch is now calling for more painful sanctions to be levied against the country, which is already under an illegal unilateral U.S. blockade that has caused the death of at least 40,000 civilians and perhaps as many as 100,000. Oh, there we go. There we go. That's all I got to say about that. So when you're looking at folks like the World Health Organization, the Centers for Disease Control, Human Rights Watch, sometimes these organizations are named what they are and have the mission statement that they have so they can do the exact opposite of what they claim to be doing. It's the oldest trick in the book, right? The oldest trick in the book is you paint your opponent, you paint your enemy as doing what you're doing, and then you express outrage at their actions while you're actually doing exactly what you accuse them of doing. This I wanted to bring up here. It's funny, my friend introduced me to the show the other day. I'd never seen it, and I watched a couple episodes, and I thought it was pretty funny. Just a funny show. It's Comedy Central, so of course it's supposed to be funny. But I enjoyed the show, and it got me thinking, and it resonated with an article I'm going to read you from Caitlin Johnstone next. This guy, Nathan For You, basically he goes around, and he's a real clean cut, kind of awkward, straight shooter guy who basically he goes to businesses and comes to them with just the most outlandish, ridiculous ideas for how they might be able to boost their business. And he gets people to go along with it. And obviously the results are ridiculous. And the point is, it shows how easy it is to mislead people. If you put on a nice front, you wear a nice shirt, you got a nice haircut, you come across sincere, you can be giving people the biggest line of bullshit and they'll lap it up as long as you come across reputable, come across sincere. And that's how we've been led down this dead end suicidal cul-de-sac societally, right? So this show gives you a good example of how that can be done. And Caitlin Johnstone, as usual, on the top of her game, at the top of her game, with this wonderful article published yesterday. I'm going to read this whole thing to you as we wrap it up here. We are ruled by wizards. Okay? Caitlin Johnstone, follow her. She's brilliant. She's very prolific, and she always gets me thinking. And looking at the whole situation, whether it's, everybody's belief that, ones and zeros in a computer signifying money, signifying modern fiat currency is the most important thing in the world, or believing that endless wars are the only way to make people safe, or believing that the government cares about us so much that it's got to crash the global economy and lock us all in our homes to keep us safe. Why do people believe this stuff? Because we are ruled by wizards. Bending reality is as simple as bending people's perception of reality. Throughout history, the mythology of civilizations around the world has been full of tales of men and women who mastered a mysterious esoteric art, which enabled them to use language in a way that bends reality to their will. They've been called wizards, witches, magicians, sorcerers, warlocks, or enchanters, and the utterances they speak have been known as spells, magic, incantations, conjurations, or enchantments. But the theme is always more or less the same. A member of a small elite group with the ability to voice special utterances which shape reality according to their will in a way that transcends the mundane mechanics of the world. People have long held a general intuition that language holds a power far beyond what ordinary mortals use it for, especially since the advent of the written word, which was long mysterious to all but the most elite classes in a given society. This intuition has been spot on, though perhaps not exactly in the way that ancient mythologies have envisioned. When I say bending reality is as simple as bending people's perception of reality, I'm not making some sort of mystical or otherworldly claim. I'm just making a factual observation about the influence that narrative control has over events big and small, which transpire in our world. Many people whose brains lack a healthy empathy center, i.e. sociopaths, psychopaths, and other narcissists, already understand this on some level. Humans are storytelling creatures. Everything about our understanding of the world is made up of narratives that are made of language. For example, my name's Alice and I was born in Detroit is a narrative. The universe is 13.772 billion years old is a narrative. If I drink up that bottle of bleach, I'll probably die is a narrative. Narratives don't need to be based on any objective fact at all. I can fly by flapping my arms is a narrative. God says you should mail me 10% of your income is a narrative. You live in a free democracy, and everything you read in the New York Times is an accurate representation of that reality, is a narrative. Ordinary people use narratives and language to understand and connect with each other, but they tend to favor narratives that are true. People who lack healthy empathy centers have no interest in understanding or connecting beyond the extent to which it can get them what they want. So they'll happily use lies, half-truths, distortions, and lies of omission to obtain power, control, money, sex, or whatever it is they're after. They have a completely different relationship with language and narrative than people with healthy empathy centers, and they learn to exploit that difference. Anyone who has escaped from a relationship with a manipulator will have an experiential understanding of what I'm talking about here. You start off under the mistaken impression that the abusive partner uses languages the same way you do. So you keep trying to use it to form an understanding and connection. But it's like your words just get turned around and twisted and used against you in a way you can't really keep up with. You are fed narratives about yourself, which have no bearing on reality. You're crazy. You're not remembering things correctly. You're dishonest. I'm not abusing you. You're abusing me, etc. You are fed narratives about your abuser, which have no bearing on reality. I'm the only one who will ever love you. I'm too nice. That's my problem. I'm the real victim here, etc. When you escape from such a relationship, it's common to spend months or years afterwards sorting out facts from fiction, reality from narrative distortion. Depending on the skill of the manipulator and how long you were with them, they may have inserted some very disorienting beliefs deep inside your consciousness in order to control you. And they can take a lot, and those beliefs can take a lot of work to uproot. Large-scale manipulation of entire populations works more or less the same way small-scale manipulation of individuals does. And unlike abusive partners who have to more or less figure out their internal art on their own, there's been a concerted, collaborative effort to refine the science of propaganda for well over a century. Our world is set up in a way that rewards sociopathy with wealth and power, which means adept manipulators tend to rise to the top of business, government, and media. This is no accident. While ordinary healthy people were concerning themselves with learning the truth and forming connections, those in our world with no interest in such things have been engineering power structures to reward a lack of empathy. People who are willing to manipulate narratives towards their advantage without regard for truth or justice rise above those who aren't in such systems. Oh, sorry. Thought-provoking, isn't it? We now therefore find ourselves ruled by those who use language not to connect and understand, but to bend reality according to their will. We are ruled, in a sense, by wizards. Vast troves of treasure are poured into controlling the dominant narratives in our society as they relate to those in power and what they want to achieve. The government is your friend. The newsman is trustworthy. We live in a democracy, and your countrymen can influence government policy and behavior by voting. That bad guy in that other country needs to be taken out. Those people telling you we're lying are Russian propaganda and need to be censored. The spells are cast, and before you know it, the bombers are deployed, the sanctions are implemented, the dissent is censored, the journalist is jailed, the political leader has been installed, the consent has been manufactured, reality has been bent by simply using language to bend people's perception of reality. The more powerful the government, the more skillful the wizards. Chomsky once said, any dictator would admire the uniformity and obedience of the US media. Narrative spells are cooked up by wizards in opaque intelligence agencies and uncritically regurgitated in anonymously sourced news reports. And before you know it, Saddam has weapons of mass destruction, Russia is attacking American democracy, and China cooked up the coronavirus in a Wuhan laboratory. And as always, people know that the status quo is normal and is totally working great for everyone. The good news is that this kind of word magic is not only accessible to esoteric masters reciting incantations from the pages of a dusty grimoire, which interestingly has the same etymological root as the word grammar. You learn something new every day. Anyone who understands malleable nature of narrative is capable of fighting back against the enchantments which pull the wool over the eyes of the rank and file public day in and day out, and can advance narratives that are based on facts and reality rather than lies and distortions. You can be a wizard too. You can use language to influence the world by pushing back against the narratives spouted by the establishment spellcasters. The better you understand the nature of narrative and its all-pervading role in our consciousness and our society, the better a wizard you can be. Pay attention not just to the large-scale narratives believed by masses of people, but the small-scale narratives believed by yourself as well. Find out what subtle stories you've been holding on to, even in the darkest recesses of your subconscious mind, which have been bending your perception of reality in a way which does not benefit you. If you want to master narrative wizardry, you must first attain mastery over its role in your own operating system. Put truth first in all ways. Set the intention to use your healthy empathy center to connect, to understand, and to be honest with those to whom you speak and with yourself. The more lucid you become in this way, the more potent your linguistic magic will grow. Narrative control is too important to be left to the manipulators, propagandists, liars, and sociopaths. See through the illusion. Shine truth on the lies. You're a wizard, Harry. Caitlin Johnstone, just on point. Kind of writing gets shivers going up your spine. I love it. Thank you, Caitlin Johnstone, so much for writing. You guys go follow her website. Brilliant lady. I'm going to close out the show today. It's funny. I saw this video. I watched the first couple minutes of it. Kind of wasn't feeling it, so I turned it off. But then I had 5 different people recommend this video to me over the course of 24 hours. 5 friends, my neighbor Jersey, my friend Sprout, a whole bunch of other people recommended this to me. So I watched it, and it's very thought-provoking. The Out of Shadows documentary lifts the mask on how mainstream media and Hollywood manipulate and control the masses by spreading propaganda throughout their content. Our goal is to wake up the general public by shedding light on how we all have been lied to and brainwashed by a hidden enemy with a sinister agenda. It's pretty wild. This movie was made by a couple of Hollywood stuntmen, of all folks, and it is a pretty good watch. It's a little more religious, a little more, heavily Christianized than I tend to be myself, but that's a personal thing, right? I think the belief in a loving God who sent their only son down to earth to save us from ourselves, it's kind of far-fetched, but it's definitely more believable than the notion that the world's largest terrorist organization, drug dealer, and arms dealer, the United States government, has our best interests in mind and is so concerned about the health and well-being of the elderly and infirm that it just had to shut down the global economy and put us all under house arrest. So I recommend this video. If you want to check it out, I'll paste it in there. And on that note, I'm signing off for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. You can see I'm horribly sunburned. Had a lovely time out skiing today. It's so important that we get out and enjoy the natural world. The sun is shining. The birds are singing. Life goes on. And most importantly, the resistance is solidifying. The resistance to these absurd lockdowns. People keep waking up. People keep waking up every day. And it's up to all of us to help wake people up. If you check, I'm sure you've read the crawler there at the bottom. I'm just going to go ahead and read it from the beginning to close out the show today. Remember, the mainstream media is specifically designed to distract us, divide us, deceive us, deter us from taking positive action, and depress the holy hell out of us. What's the solution? Well, we can become our own wizards. We can take the narrative back from the spellcasters, the propagandists, the manipulators, the liars. We can do all these things, and it's up to all of us to do it. I, for one, I'm not going to lay down and take it, and I encourage you to not take it either. Oh, come on, crawler. Come on, crawler. Let's check the comments here. I'm going to go ahead and read through this. A lot of good comments. Thank you. Carrie Mark chiming in. Yeah, we've covered the ventilators too. I'm going to leave that up for people to read. 11 reasons why this absurd state of medical martial law needs to end. Number 1, poverty is more deadly than COVID. Number 2, tyranny is more deadly than COVID. Number 3, social isolation is more deadly than COVID. 4, whoa, what happened? My crawler moved back. Just gotta wait. Thank you for being so patient. I know this is the most boring show on the internet, long format, revolutionary news show. But 4, freedom is always more important than safety. 5, I got good news. The COVID death statistics have been massively inflated, and at least 99% of infections are not fatal, especially in children, which is who we should really be looking out for. Number 6, government, corporate media, and the medical insurance pharmaceutical cartel are not trustworthy. They've proven this in a myriad of ways. Number 7, the proposed cures are worse than the disease itself. What cures? Well, medical martial law, economic collapse, a global surveillance state, mandatory vaccinations, and a globalist technocratic oligarchy, and who knows what else they got planned. Number 8, exposure. Despite what they might lie about at the World Health Organization, exposure does build herd immunity, and most coronaviruses are seasonal. Number 9, COVID treatments and preventions already do exist. Number 10, in a world where the rich are not obligated to support the poor, the healthy have no obligation to suffer for the infirm. Our bodies, our choices. And I think we should look out more for the youth, the children, than the elderly at this stage of the game. Number 11, healthcare for all patients is suffering due to the COVID overreaction, and several serious medical conditions are more deadly and common than COVID. These people are not getting the care they need. Hospitals here in the United States, even though the medical insurance pharmaceutical complex is a profit-driven cartel with a monopoly on healthcare and has been bastardized into sick care, more concerned with making money than helping people get healthy. Still, a lot of people, millions of people that depend on the healthcare system are not getting the treatment they need. I've got friends who are on the boards of hospitals that are operating at 20 to 30% of normal because everything's been shut down due to COVID, okay? Let's use our brains here. Let's use our thinking caps. Let's use our critical analysis. You can see that most of these reasons in my crawler are pretty self-evident. There's never been a better time to stand up and speak your mind. There's never been a better time to put your foot down because this whole situation stinks to high heaven. And I, for one, do not consent to the world that is being foisted upon us by the manipulators, by the spellcasters, by the propagandists, by the deceitful Decepticons, and their technocratic globalist overlords. Fuck all them. That's a fact. I'm out for now. Y'all take care of yourselves and the ones you love. Have a great day. Don't let the bastards get you down. I'm out for now, but I'll be back again real soon. One love. Peace.